Do you like to look into the webcam, or is that creepy? Like if
You know, it's funny. It's probably best to look into the webcam because
okay,
that it'll look like when people are watching. That's what it'll look like you're looking at them. But
yeah, yeah.
I'll forget. I almost certainly
Okay,
won't
cool.
do it.
All right, so this is going to be a post E3 conversation. My name is Matt Sternad from 30 and Nerdy.
And I'm Scott William Hannon, as well from 30 and Nerdy.
Awesome. And Scott, I'm going to let you start things off from there.
All right, great. Well, we're just going to try and wrap up E3 2014. Go over some of the things we liked, some of the things we didn't like. Although I don't think there's too much of that. And just give our just give our general impressions about the show and what it means for the year and to come. So, just the first question, or first place to start. What stood out to you this year?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I guess to give a little bit of context, I go into E3. It's always, like I said, it's like second Christmas for me, so I'm always really, really, really pumped about it. And therefore, what stood out to me most would be Nintendo's presentation. And I guess because I had zero expectations, I've kind of been a little bit, I guess you could say, butthurt by them over the past 2 years for not having like their giant presence there.
Yeah.
So knowing that they were doing like another Nintendo Direct presentation, I was just kind of like, okay, I'll watch it. We'll see what happens. And I felt floored by their presentation. I just thought
Yeah.
they were off the charts. Did you get a chance to watch it, or?
I didn't, but the general impression seemed to be that everybody was wildly impressed. And just for people who aren't familiar with the process or what a direct presentation means as opposed to like the giant stage presence that Sony and Microsoft have or had, how would you describe the Nintendo Direct presentation as opposed to the other presentations?
Right, okay, so the other presentations, like you were saying, for those who don't know, are held around the Los Angeles Convention Center area, usually in like separate auditoriums or whatnot, and the bigwigs from all of the companies, being Microsoft, Sony, Ubisoft, and EA, take the stage and they show new game footage with new announcements, and there's like a giant press audience there, and there's always lots of lights, and it's a big spectacle. And so for the second year in a row, Nintendo has opted to purely stream their presentation over the internet, and it's pre-recorded, so you don't get that live vibe from it. And last year was kind of like them. It was where they test piloted this whole idea of bringing their information directly to their fans over the internet. And this year, it's like they stepped it up a notch. They partnered up with like Robot Chicken to animate, like their like claymations of just some of like the Nintendo presidents and Nintendo characters, and they took cheap shots, comedically at themselves and at the press and like all sorts of stuff. So it was like interspliced in between their game announcements and whatnot. It was just like it was Robot Chicken comedy. It was awesome.
So it was like it was a media presentation as opposed to a live presentation.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Pre-recorded media presentation.
And just out of curiosity, because I mean, I grew up with Nintendo, but I've actually been kind of absent from them for the Wii and the Wii U. And part of that, what distinguishes the Wii and the Wii U is not as robust of an online presence.
Yeah.
Is it weird that Nintendo's E3 presentations have been purely online?
Yeah, kind of ironic, right?
Yeah. It's a type of gaming they haven't fully embraced, and yet they give all their information out via the internet. That's strange.
Right, exactly. They haven't exactly embraced like fully like Twitch or Ustream or YouTube for that matter. They're kind of getting into it now. They've relied a lot on their Miiverse as kind of like their social hub on the Wii U and on the 3DS systems, where like people can kind of communicate directly with Nintendo and like fans communicating with each other. But I totally agree. Completely ironic that that's a path that they've paved.
Okay, cool. All right, so it's actually really good for me to hear that you were so impressed by Nintendo. As I was just going through Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo's games and releases, I was actually shocked to see how many of Nintendo's games had started to interest me just by looking at the pictures on a few trailers.
Right.
Having not been interested in Nintendo for kind of a while, which is sad because I still consider myself a huge Nintendo fan and I grew up with them, but I haven't wanted much from them or much of their offerings. Okay, so it's cool to hear that Nintendo sort of reinvigorated their fan base. So before we get into what you were expecting from E3, let's just recap. What have you been playing?
Okay, good place to go. So I've been playing a lot of my 3DS. So, like you, I fell out of touch with them over the course of the Wii. I never owned one. I was ticked off about the whole motion control thing, especially after I loved the GameCube so much, and I could tell that they weren't trying to talk to me anymore when they, were going after like families and like the casual market and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I haven't embraced the Wii U yet, but when I discovered,
what did you love so much about the GameCube? Because I love the GameCube too, and very few people are sympathetic to that sentiment.
I'm trying to. What was it? Was it Rogue Squadron 2? Yeah. That was like one of the launch titles. I think they grabbed me there. It was like the graphics. I was like, oh my gosh, like seeing Star Wars at that caliber, of like presentation was amazing. And then when they started doing stuff like they got Resident Evil 4 as an exclusive, they were making games like Eternal Darkness. I'm a huge survival horror fan, and so I just
and Eternal Darkness is like one of the last true to form survival horror games.
Yes, yeah. And then they had the Resident Evil remakes. Yeah, so I don't know. I just felt like they were speaking to both like niche audiences as well as their like core Nintendo fans who wanted, like Marios and Star Foxes and stuff like that. And they definitely misstepped a lot with that system, but I just thought that overall it had a ton of games on it that neither the PS2 or the Xbox had at the time.
Cool. All right, so your 3DS.
Oh yeah. Anyways, I've fallen head over heels for it. Everything between Luigi's Mansion, Mario 3D World, Fire Emblem Awakening. I recently picked up Ocarina of Time 3D, and it was just like you were saying. I fell out of touch with them for so long that it just felt so good. Dare I say, falling in love with them all over again. All in the palm of my hand, which was the amazing thing. I mean, because besides that, it's like I still, like you, I picked up Dark Souls 2 for PS3. I've been playing that. I picked up Drakengard 3 for PS3, which is an incredibly niche action RPG. I'm trying to think of what else. Mostly just playing my PS3 and my DS.
Cool.
How about you?
I haven't been playing too many new games. My roommates and I have been playing Just Cause 2 over and over and over again.
Nice.
It's not a unique game at all, but it nails its genre perfectly.
Right.
Big, over-the-top, ridiculous action game. My roommate actually put it best. He said, it takes all the fun that you had in Grand Theft Auto and makes that the point of the game. So the goal of the game is to go blow stuff up and to take things from people. And instead of Grand Theft Auto, it was just kind of like those were the side quests, so that was the fun you had off to the side on your own. My roommate and I also 100%ed NBA Jam on Fire Edition just recently.
That's awesome.
Which was a huge undertaking for us. We got stuck on the Jam bots about halfway through the campaign and got really frustrated, and there was a lot of yelling and swearing at the TV screen. I bought Dark Souls 2. I played it for a day. I restarted 3 times. And I just haven't had the patience yet to pick it back up again, but I'm definitely meaning to.
Gotcha.
My roommate and I have also been working through EDF 2025.
What is that?
EDF, Earth Defense Force.
Oh, yeah, I knew you were a big fan of those. Okay.
Loved it. Yeah, so we beat it on hard. Now we're going through on the next hardest difficulty, and it's, as advertised, really difficult.
Very cool.
And I was about...
Oh, go on, sorry.
I was about to pick up Gone Home on Steam, but the sale ended, and so I'm going to wait a little bit. It's only $20. I should just get it anyway.
I know. I got that email also because it's on my wish list. And then literally today, before we started doing this, I was checking to see if it was still on sale. Not that I have any money, but no, you're right. It's gone.
Yeah, we were probably doing that at the exact same time. Okay, so going into E3, what were you expecting to see? What did you see that you expected, and what did you not see that you expected?
Okay. First of all, I'm a big big Sony fan. It's been a really long time. And I'd like to think that I'm not a Sony fanboy, but I'm just a fan. It's been a long time since I felt like Microsoft is really doing anything for me with
Sure.
with the Xbox. And so every E3 I go in wanting news about The Last Guardian. For the PS3.
That was my number one as well. That was
Yeah.
absolutely my number one.
Or the PS4 at this point. I was hoping that they were going to, like, quote unquote, reintroduce it. And because I didn't get that, I was honestly left with a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. I almost wonder if it was a little bit of that sour taste that kind of helped me get so swept away into Nintendo's press conference, you know, because they unveiled a short little clip of a Zelda for the Wii U, and it was like that feeling I got from that was what I wanted to feel when Sony announced The Last Guardian, you know, reintroduction and whatnot. I mean, really, that was the only thing I was anticipating. That, or I kind of dreamt up this scenario where, like, Gabe Newell walked onto Sony's stage and was like, "Here is Half-Life 3 running on the PS4, and you know, yes, it's coming to Steam and Xbox One and all this stuff." Those are the two games I wanted to see every year: Half-Life 3, Last Guardian, Shenmue 3, and I know I'm holding my breath on all of them.
Shenmue, good lord.
Yeah, I know. I'm one of those guys. Like, I cannot be pleased.
Half-Life 3, Last Guardian, those were two of my big ones. Maybe I missed it because I didn't get to pay as close attention as I wanted to. Did that game company announce a game?
That game company, refresh my memory. What did they do? Because
they did Flow, they did Flower, and they did Journey.
Oh, that's okay. I knew it was on the tip of my tongue. No, they didn't announce. Oh, okay. Wait a second.
There was an announcement from a bunch of guys who left that game company and created their own studio. It was like, I wrote it down here.
Did they make that game that's all like made in like water? It's like the underwater adventure game? Oh, okay.
Abzu, or whatever, ABZU. So even though I didn't get a game from that game company, I got a game from guys who came from that game company.
Right.
So that company, that helps. I was also looking forward to, this is weird, I was looking forward to more Oculus Rift material.
Okay.
I was expecting this E3, because I think they're so close to releasing, I was expecting like Oculus Rift to be the big hardware, you know, news of the show.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there, so I didn't get to see anything on the ground. I'm sure there were a couple Oculus Rift booths, but I was expecting that to be like the big, here it comes, it's coming this day or this year, and we're going to have this and this and this lined up for it. Sony kind of did that with their Project Morpheus.
Right.
Like, as far as hardware goes, there wasn't much. I also half expected to see something about Steam machines there.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I wonder if there will be more at like Gamescom or something.
Maybe. I'm not disappointed in that because I know Valve is just off doing their own thing and they kind of don't care.
Yeah.
But it would have been a definite claim on the console war or on the console industry if Valve had put up a Steam Machines booth.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe they're just not trying to make that claim. Maybe they don't want to make it a battle between them. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I just sort of thought that they might do something. They didn't. Not a big deal.
I was reading some interesting things online. I don't know. It might have been Alienware's Steam Machines. Something about how at first they were planning on like building these like first line of Steam machines to run like the Steam operating system, and then something happened with that, and I don't know if Valve is taking longer than expected to kind of like roll that out, but they ended up just putting Windows 8 on them or something like that. But the internal components, the processors and whatnots, were still like the Steam Machine specs. So I don't know if Valve's having trouble or holding back, or I'm not sure.
The last news I heard was that they wanted to spend more time developing the controller, and so they have pushed back the definite release of the Steam Machine itself.
Gotcha.
I think you can download the Steam OS still, but I don't know if it does you much good.
I wonder if it's just the Steam OS beta. I just know that in regards to like Oculus Rift and like Project Morpheus, I keep hearing amazing things about like I think it's called Eve Valkyrie, the like the Eve Online universe and whatnot, and like those developers made kind of like that first-person Oculus experience where you're actually sitting inside like one of the spacecrafts, and like just that whole thing where you've got Oculus Rift on your face, and you're just like able to look around like the cockpit, or you're flying around in space, and you can look out the windows. And for as skeptical as I am, I feel like I've heard enough positive feedback on the whole experience that I'm kind of waiting for it to take my breath away and like hopefully be affordable, maybe.
Yeah, well, that's something they've said. they've tried to make it clear that they want Oculus Rift to be affordable, which is cool. Yeah. And yeah, it looks like it'll be perfect for those sorts of games. Something like Star Citizen or like EVE Online, like those cockpit games. In particular, single player adventure games like anything you have to sit on the couch with your friends with, or a third-person game won't do much good. But the other cool thing about Oculus Rift is that as far as cinema goes, like I just don't care about 3D. There's the dimming of the image issue. There's crappy 3D conversion issues. There's the gimmick of having to pay $4 extra. The glasses that I have to put on my face. Yeah. There's a lot of nonsense that goes along with it, and I don't feel like anyone's made a movie that proves 3D is necessary to the art form. However, video games benefit tremendously from it because it's immersion in the world and it's something you interact with. And so it pulls you into that environment. And Oculus Rift gets around the dimming issue by having two screens in front of you. Okay. And neither one of them interact with each other the way that projecting a movie in 3D does. And so it immediately leapt to my creative and artistic self and saying, this is a system that's really trying to work artistically as opposed to just charge people more money. But we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I never fully, up until this moment where you're kind of like describing the 3D-ness of it, I never really thought that that's how it would have to work. Otherwise, it was just going to be like a screen really close to your eyeball, where like obviously wouldn't do anything.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's dive into the major announcements from the companies and the conference itself. Let's just go ahead and start with Microsoft. Your impressions of the Microsoft announcements and so on.
Off the top of my head, I mean, they did like a big Sunset Overdrive trailer, which I thought was cool. So Sunset Overdrive, have you heard anything about it? Or?
Yeah, I heard a little bit about it.
Okay, I guess then for people who don't know, it's the next game from, I'm going to just call them Insomniac Games. I don't think it's Insomniac Studios. Anyways, the guys who made like the Ratchet and Clank series and Resistance on like the PlayStation and whatnot, PS3. Anyways, long story short, it's like this cool, colorful, open-world game, and you're running around and you're like shooting mutants and stuff like that, and kind of like gliding along rails and stuff like that. It looks cool. It's not for me. Other than that, I know that Microsoft unveiled the Master Chief Collection, the Halo Master Chief Collection, rather. Yeah. It's literally Halo 1, 2, 3, and 4 with all the multiplayer maps together. Supposedly, each individual Halo game in the package is running on like its original game engine, so it's supposed to feel like the old games, which is something that people wanted. And then Halo 2 in that package has gotten the like the Anniversary Edition treatment. What that means is that while you're playing it, you can swap between new HD versions of the graphics and kind of like the old way the game looked on the original Xbox. I mean, other than that, and the reason why I left it off the top of my head was because I'm not sure what else stood out to me. Do you know, at the end of the Microsoft conference, was that when they showed the Rainbow Six Siege footage?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't actually watch the presentation.
Yeah, I think it was either there or at the end of EA's they showed off Rainbow Six Siege. I mean, Microsoft, they opened up with
I think that was EA.
It might have been EA. And I know Microsoft opened up with like the Call of Duty, whatever, it's taking place in the future now and stuff like that. I'm not a big Call of Duty guy either, so.
Yeah, me neither. Advanced Warfare, I think.
Yeah, something like that. And then, I mean, to be honest, it was like the Microsoft conference to me was incredibly, incredibly solid. I can't knock it for a single thing. Oh yeah, they showed off Phantom Dust, like a trailer for this game called Phantom Dust, which is them playing homage to an original Xbox game also.
This
You
is the
know,
weirdest remake.
yeah, I know, of all the things, right? Hopefully, I mean, good luck marketing that, because
Yeah, I was actually working at a GameStop when that game came out, and we would play it at the store because we were certain no one was buying it. And so it wasn't a game that we had to hide and like put back and reseal or anything like that.
That's so funny.
It
Yeah,
was
no,
fun, but
yeah,
it just wasn't
yeah.
in demand.
Right. And I wonder if it will be. Like, nobody remembers it. I won't say nobody. Obviously, some people do, and there's, people who are, crying for it loud enough on the internet to where, Microsoft and whoever it is they got to develop it is going to answer that call. But yeah,
Yeah,
like I said, overall their conference, it was games, 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 which is what they
yeah,
promised, and it was super, super solid. But I still felt in watching it, because I'm not a big Halo guy, that none of the exclusives that they have coming out are going to make me run out and buy an Xbox One. So I'm
sure.
still content with not having one. But for people who are like a fan of Microsoft's brand of gaming, I'm really, really excited for them, because I feel like if you are either an Xbox One owner now, or you're going to be one at the end of 2014 or going into 2015, you've got a lot of stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat as you. I don't really care for the prime Xbox games. Halo, it's cool. I had my time with it. I'm kind of
Same
done.
here. Yeah.
Fable Legends might be fun, but Fable's
Right,
been a
Fable
letdown to me
Legends.
since the beginning. Um,
Because Peter Molyneux, he talked it up so much that
he
it's like
oversold that game so badly. And it might have been a fun game if I didn't expect a completely different game.
they're still trying to build their way up to
Mhm.
that original vision that he blabbed on about.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, like Fable would have been a fun game up until about like the last fifth, when it then suddenly went on rails and you couldn't explore, you couldn't leave the story. It just like forced you down the throat of its conclusion, and
Right.
then at the end it makes you make that decision if you're gonna. I think it's like you're gonna destroy the sword or if you're gonna keep the sword, and it's clearly labeled good or bad, and all the good and bad things you did throughout the course of the game no longer mean anything, which was
Right.
like a huge deal in the whole game. You're building your reputation or destroying it, and your body's changing, and then at the end of the game they just say, oh, and then you can do whatever. It's like, well, no, that's not how consequence works.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
You just negated your entire game. It's like X-Men 3.
Oh
Um,
gosh. The Abomination.
the Abomination. So they also announced a new Crackdown game, which is a game I never got into, but it would be cool, I imagine, if you liked the first one, to get more. Project Spark seems really interesting.
It does, yeah, and they've got the Conquer. Did you see at the end of the trailer, like Conquer the squirrel comes out and he makes some comment about not having had a game, and I think it was like 10 years or something like that, and so supposedly they're going to put some Conquer specific content in the game to just, again, appease
Just
those
to
fans.
yeah.
Yeah, which
And
is cool.
it also shows like Microsoft trying to do something more than just first-person shooters or like ultra-violent gaming. They're trying to get into the creative aspect of it, which is it's just something that Sony doesn't do too much. It doesn't have a whole lot of like user-created stuff except for like Little Big Planet.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
big thing, yeah.
but Little Big Planet's a big deal because it's adorable and lots of fun. There's also that game Scalebound, which I don't quite. The trailer doesn't tell me too much. It's some guy wearing headphones fighting dragons.
Yeah, from Platinum Games, those guys
Yeah.
made, Vanquish, Bayonetta, and stuff like that. It looks like, to me, it looks like a... Did you ever play Vanquish?
No.
No, it's kind of like it's futuristic sci-fi, really, really fast. It was actually directed by Shinji Mikami, who made the Resident Evil 1 and whatnot in
Yeah.
4.
Cool.
And anyways, it looks like Vanquish meets Monster Hunter, but yeah, literally nobody knows anything about it because that CG trailer is all we got.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there was something that caught my attention. Ori and the Blind Forest.
Yes, it looked beautiful.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous. Hard to tell very much about it, but it had a stunning, that sort of glowing, saturated, cool color palette.
Yeah.
Just really beautiful looking. And then there was Assassin's Creed. There was that Batman Arkham Knights game.
You're
Um,
right. They showed so much, and here I am, like I don't remember anything from
well,
it. Thank you for
I
having a
pulled up
list or something.
I pulled up a list just to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Yeah. No, their conference
Here's
was
one.
good.
I want to know what you think of Destiny.
Oh, that's a really good question.
All right. Well, here let me start then.
Okay.
I'm bored to tears by it.
Oh my gosh, no. Okay. So you
um,
feel the same way about it I feel, but you go on first.
um, it's made by Bungie, right? That's a Bungie
Yeah.
game.
Mm-hmm.
So Bungie sold Halo to Microsoft. Microsoft is now making Halo. Bungie then goes and makes a game that looks like Halo. like,
Right.
the graphics are pretty. I'm sure it's going to be just as solid a gameplay as any of the Halo games they released. It might even ratchet it up a notch. I felt like Halo 3 was the best Halo that they released. Halo 4 was just a little bit more. So they're not a company that I expect to do worse than they did previously. They're also not a company that I expect to surprise me. They're not a company I expect to do anything interesting or new or unique. Because when you think back on it, even Halo wasn't a very good game. It just had great game mechanics,
Okay.
But like
Yeah.
the level design was huge, and you had to do a lot of backtracking. The story was sort of an amorphous, invisible entity in the game. So I don't really expect much more from Destiny than just a very familiar but solid game mechanic.
I'm there with you. For some reason, whenever I watch footage of it, and maybe it's because I assume like you haven't got a hands-on with it yet, I just see four people walking through corridors shooting. I'm going to speak generically, like space aliens with their little
Yeah.
sci-fi weapons and whatnot. And like you, I'm like bored to tears. I'm like, okay, sometimes it's open, sometimes it's a corridor shooter. Like it's got beautiful sunrises and sunsets, and some like pretty hues. Like the saturation of the colors in the games is appealing sometimes. And I'm bored by it every single
Yeah.
time. And then today I was listening to some podcasts from some people who actually got to play it on the show floor, kind of like an extended look at the game, and they were saying that when you get your hands on it and you start collecting items like loot basically, and you have to bring like the loot back to like the central hub town area and actually have it identified, and then you start using that loot to like upgrade I don't know if it's like weapons and abilities, but whatever it is in the game that you're upgrading, they said it's actually pretty fun. I don't know, I kind of hope that they have a demo or something, because I don't think I'm just going to jump out of my seat and spend $60 on it out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's like it's not that I'm familiar with Bungie making bad games. But
Right.
there's just nothing about it that stood out to me as more interesting than any of their previous entries.
Kind of like a not funny version of Borderlands.
And that was something that Borderlands really nailed. Is like it had a really cool, unique art style, really solid gameplay, and then a great sense of humor, and it was loads of fun.
Yeah, and if you remember, years and years ago, before they went with the art style and the humor set that they ended up launching Borderlands with, it was like a serious, open, well, as open as that game is, like sci-fi game, before they figured out it wasn't working and they changed it all. So I don't know.
I mean, I hope they surprise me, but those are just my expectations at the moment.
Yeah.
A lot of people were converted over Dragon Age Inquisition.
I heard that too.
I couldn't get through the demo for the second game, so.
Oh, interesting.
I've played the tabletop role-playing game for Dragon Age. I love it. It has a great game mechanic. It's a 3D6 style game. One of the dice you rolls a stunt die. If it comes up a 6, or if it comes up doubles with another one of your non-stunt dice, you get a stunt at that number.
Okay.
And it makes the game feel very epic. You're constantly doing cool stuff. It's fun. The video game, I watched my roommate play the first one, bored, and like I said, I couldn't get through the demo for the second game, so I just let it go. And I had a couple other friends who were similarly opinioned on the game say that the Dragon Age Inquisition trailer has them very interested. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I don't know. Did you?
Yeah, it looks really good. My path through Dragon Age is a little bit different in that I held off and I eventually picked up, I think it's called Dragon Age Origins. It was the first one,
Yeah.
and I loved it so much. It's one of those campaigns that you take about like 50 hours or so to go through, and it's one of the only 50-hour RPG campaigns that I've actually, like, I beat it, and I was just like, oh my god, I want to start playing it all over again. With a different character class and stuff like that, and just be the bad guy this time. I loved it. I thought the demo for Dragon Age 2 was okay to the point where I ended up buying the game on launch day, and then just when I got my hands on like the whole what 2 ended up being, and I just felt how it was faster, but it was really dumbed down, and it didn't have any of like the depth or like customization, the options that you could do with your characters and your classes and whatnot in the first game. I was just like, I'm over it. And so Dragon Age 3 for me, it had a lot to prove. They had to prove to me that they learned their lesson and that they're going to put that depth back into the game. And from the first few trailers that they released, I honestly couldn't tell if they had achieved that or not. But if you go online and you find some of, not even like gameplay trailers, but just kind of like camera footage of people playing on the show floor and whatnot, the show floor, you can see that depth is there because they have like the camera angle is either behind the camera if you do want to be like up close in with the action, or it looks like with the click of a button you could raise the camera up and just have that kind of like isometric / top-down perspective on the action. It pauses the gameplay in between your input commands, and it looks like they made it both deep and action-oriented depending on how you want to play it.
Okay, cool.
I'm glad
All right, so the next one is one I will tip the scales and say I am very excited for. Evolve.
Okay.
It is probably the best game that I won't end up playing.
For what reasons won't you end up playing it?
Because I won't be able to get all of my friends together to play that game with me, and that's the way I want to play it.
Yeah.
It's something that I would like to see more of in general is local co-op. I missed that. The 64 gave us 4 controller ports, the GameCube had 4, the Wii had 4. Everything after PlayStation 2, including the Xbox, has had more than 2 controllers, has been more than 2 controllers capable, and we are left with a dearth of local co-op games that are as exciting as, say, GoldenEye or Perfect Dark.
Right.
Or even Mario Tennis, which is probably not something that too many people bring up, but I have played that game to pieces because you can get 4 people, sit them around, and you just wail on a fake tennis ball with each other. And there's so much to be had. There's such an exciting experience to be had to play with your friends in the same room with each other. It's entirely missing. EDF is a really good example, actually. You can do, with 2025, you can do local co-op of 2, but online co-op of 4.
Nice.
They won't let you do 4 local co-op. And it's a bug blow 'em up game. Like, like what better game to sit next to a whole bunch of your friends and just go to town on a bunch of giant insects?
Yeah, I guess there is something about the just kind of the energy in a room when you're playing with other people versus just having headsets.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easier to coordinate. I mean, anytime I've played with a headset, I've had a hard time understanding what was going on anyway. I would just take it off, and then all I hear are people yelling, like, why is this guy not listening? Evolve, yeah. So I miss local co-op. And even though it's harder and harder to get all my friends together, it's like when we have the opportunity, we do all sit down and play 4-player NBA Jam because you can and because it's great, it's kinetic. And it changes the game experience. And Evolve is a little bit more difficult. It's 5 players, and it makes it slightly more difficult to get 5 people together. But it's a brilliant setup for a game. One player plays the monster. The monster wants to stay alive because the longer it stays alive, the more powerful it becomes.
Right.
The other 4 want to kill the monster because otherwise the monster will kill them.
Yeah, and it's class-based gameplay, which is always awesome.
Yeah, it has a very exciting trailer. I highly suggest you watch it. It's got a really cool cover of Danzig's mother, right? This lady named Lizzie, who I don't know anything about, but it's a great cover of the song. So I'm glad to see it coming to the consoles as well. There was a rumor that it was going to be cross-platform multiplayer, like you'd be able to play on your Xbox and on your PC.
Oh wow.
But I don't see that actually happening, and I didn't hear any confirmation or denial of that. But
Gotcha.
Evolve, I'm excited for it. It's a Valve game.
When a game comes out cross-platform, do you generally buy the console version or the PC version, or just depends on what it is?
Depends on what it is. I went with the console version for Dark Souls.
Okay.
You know, generally speaking, I don't even have a huge PC. Well, I have a very large PC, but it's not the most powerful that I could build. You know, I'm just running. I bought this massive tower because I don't like being out of space. I don't use much of it, but anyway. You know, it depends on the game. It really depends on the game. I bought Tomb Raider for my PC. I can run it at really high frame rate, with really high detail, and it's gorgeous. I could have done the same for Dark Souls 2, but I bought it on the console. One, because my roommate wants to play it as well. It's just easier to go back and forth between the PlayStation rather than have him come into my room and sit while I'm trying to sleep and play the game. But also, you know, it's fun to sit out at the couch with my friends and watch somebody get the crap kicked out of them in Dark Souls, and then pick up the controller and have the same thing happen to you.
Yeah.
And have everybody else there laughing at you.
Gotcha.
So I bought Dark Souls for the console. So it depends on the game. Games I intend to play alone, I go for the PC. Games that I either want to make sure that I play with other people or plan to play in the presence of other people, I go for the console version.
Okay.
But that's not 100% either. You know, like if I find it cheaper on the PC, I'll say, too bad.
This one's mine. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So anything else? Oh yeah, of course, in the next Tomb Raider game, which I'm really excited for because I love Crystal Dynamics Tomb Raider. I thought it was incredible.
The reboot that they just did?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I played it also. I loved it. I think I had a review on the old version this time for it. I pretty much glowed about it.
yeah, you did. It's incredible.
Yeah. Go on.
No, I was just feeling like, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that was one of the highlights of I believe it was the Microsoft conference. Also, was the new one that they, you know, it was like Laura and she had like a hood over her head and stuff like that. There were some people who I heard who were like, oh, I didn't know who it was until she took the hood off, and I was thinking like, what? The second she slipped while climbing and made like a grunting noise, I was like, I knew it was her. Like you listen to her like grunt and get hurt like so often in the game. It's just like your ears are tuned for it.
Yeah, the second you saw her going through tombs and in caves, it was like...
yeah, or that.
Yeah. But I'm really excited for it. I thought the first, or the reboot Tomb Raider game had excellent gameplay, Yeah. And it felt very tight. It also felt very fluid. The transition between climbing around and combat was very smooth. Both systems were had great reward systems. Anytime I figured out a way through a level, whether it was through killing or through climbing, I felt I had accomplished something. I loved the episodic style to the levels. It was all one island, or a very small series of islands, but you went through each piece bit by bit.
Yeah.
And there was plenty to find, and plenty to explore, and plenty to discover on your own, while not being open world to the point of being too large to enjoy. You know, like there was I think it was Jonathan Blow tweeted during the E3 conference saying that he was sort of stunned by how people still equate the size of the world in a video game to quality as opposed to its density. And of course, he's sort of advertising for his own new game, The Witness, which I don't think got too much play this year at E3, where he's advertised that it's an open world game, but it's incredibly dense. It's not very large, but it's every corner you're going to find something to do. And I felt like Tomb Raider wasn't quite that, because like I said, it was level by level or bit by bit. But it put you in a space, a very defined confined space, and then had a whole bunch of stuff for you to find and to take over. And I thought the story that went along with it, Laura learning or battling her instinct to be peaceful as well as to survive.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting to see her as an actual character and to have her experience an arc over the course of the game as you played her. It wasn't quite as elegant as it could have been, but
Yeah,
it
I
was
agree.
great. It was great.
Looking back on it, I feel like I enjoyed 95% of it. That 5% I didn't enjoy probably being the last 20 minutes of the game.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then there's Far Cry 4, which is a series that I have not gotten into at all.
Oh man, I got into Far Cry 3. I love that game.
Not that I wouldn't enjoy it. I have just never sat down to play a Far Cry game.
Yeah.
So.
It was probably, man, I've got such a back catalog of games that's kind of like, I'm not angry about next gen and like PS4 and Xbox One, but like I still haven't played stuff like Dishonored. And so what I was going to say, as far as the first-person shooters that I've played, it was the first one that I played in a really, really long time where it felt like the stealth mechanics actually worked, where
Cool.
the enemies were both intelligent and fair in terms of being able to hunt you and chase you based on your visibility and things like that. And so combining just like really core mechanics like that work and feel good with an open world, it was butter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There was a game that I was looking forward to that once I finally saw I wasn't very interested in, which is The Evil Within.
Oh, okay. We're opposites on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, go for it. What convinced you?
Well, okay, so ever since Shinji Mikami said, I don't know if it was in a tweet or a press thing or whatever, he basically said that he had refound his focus and that he was going to reapproach the survival horror genre and that he was going to be way more hands-on with the development of this new game that he was kind of like masterminding. And so when that ended up being The Evil Within, I honestly wasn't too impressed with like the first live-action CG trailer thing with like weird girl with long hair and spider-looking arms coming out of blood pools in the middle of the floor and stuff like that. But I'm one of those people that, despite all of the flaws that look to be inherent in the game in its state right now, it still looks like Resident Evil 4. And to me, that's an amazing thing. It's like if he wants to revisit that style of gameplay and make the world even more kind of like psychological and Silent Hill in nature, I'm on board.
Okay, cool.
But you don't like it because, or don't think you'll like it?
I want to see games calm down a little bit,
Okay.
which is a weird thing to say, but survival horror to me isn't just about meeting face to face with the next crazy weird monster. Even though one of the most memorable parts of Resident Evil 4 was encountering the Reavers.
Oh yes.
You remember when you're in you're in that medical facility? And you go into the freezer and something starts moving in the back, and then you realize you can't shoot it because you have to shoot out the little stuff in it. If you don't have the right scope, you can't actually see what you have to shoot out.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
That game's so good.
It is. But even Resident Evil 4 at times got over the top. Like the parts that I like the most are the intro where you're wandering through that village.
Yes.
You've got all those, right? And you've got those people wandering by, and they don't really care about you until you do something near them. But once I had to fight a boss who was like this giant octopus thing, and there's that little kid in the middle of it, the Napoleon-like guy or whatever. Yeah. It stopped being scary. It stopped being engaging. I stopped having to worry about survival, and I was just worried about hitting it when it exposed itself.
Right.
And so when I heard that, it was the Resident Evil guy, he was going to go back to the roots of survival horror, and it was going to be about, resource management and about getting through alive and scaring the hell out of you, I was like, cool, I'm absolutely on board. That's what I want to see. And it was a Bethesda game, and Bethesda made the Call of Cthulhu survival horror game, which is my style of survival horror.
Okay. Yeah, that game is totally underrated, underappreciated. I feel like there's a circle of people like you and I who know about it, but it's definitely not mainstream in the least.
Yeah, it was one of the first games I downloaded from Steam when I built my gaming PC because it was cheap and I never got to finish it. And I started it up and I could barely sit through it because I was shaking. But and then I saw the trailer for The Evil Within and it looked so much like Alan Wake.
Okay.
And it looked over the top, you know, like all the images I'm looking at here, it's like here's a guy with a gun and there's blood and it's exploding and it's really overwrought gore and these like terrifying, not terrifying, but like the horror movie aesthetic of big mutated monsters and zombies and gore and a guy with a box on his head apparently. Yeah, and even the poster image is someone's face wrapped with barbed wire. And while that's gory, and while that's certainly unsettling, it's not engaging in terms of gameplay. It's just spectacle. There's nothing wrong with spectacle. I like Just Cause. We already went through that. In EDF, it's all about spectacle. But when I'm thinking about survival horror, I want it to slow down, and I want the dangers not to be overwrought, but I want them to be tangible. You know, I want to be looking at the guy down the hall, wondering if he's going to attack me because I only have 4 bullets left, and I don't know what's around the next corner where I can find the next bullets. It doesn't even matter if he's a zombie. If he's just a dude, that's scary enough because I'm not going to make it through. Right. You know, one of the things that was so cool about the Call of Cthulhu game is that you didn't get a gun until the second third of the game. You know, the first third, you're running around weaponless, just trying to survive. And there's that one level where you have to go into the barn, I think, or the garage, and get something at the far end.
And you're hiding.
And you're hiding because there's this thing stomping up and down. And that's all the terror you need.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, I would still prefer that they surprise me. I would love The Evil Within to be the game I want it to be. But the trailer and even I think the stage demo that GameSpot had made it sound like they were really putting an emphasis on the areas of survival horror games that don't interest me, the gore and the over-the-top action. But again, all this could change, or it just might be the spectacle that they have to promote for E3.
It could be, yeah. It kind of it gives people something hands-on where the character is going to have the gun in his hand and you are going to be able to shoot stuff. Some of the stuff that was super interesting to me was I got to see a little chunk of a demo where the person who was guiding the player through was telling them that there's I don't know if they're like doors or mirrors, but there's like these lighthouse symbols like on objects on the wall in the game. And when you walk up to these lighthouse symbols, it's like you're transported to these like other areas. So he's like walking around inside this hotel, and he walks up to the lighthouse symbol, and he's transported to a completely different place. And how one of the ideas that they're playing with, at least in that, is not being able to decipher reality, like not knowing if that hotel you were just walking in is real, like what's real for the character, what's happening in their mind, and like meanwhile reaching points in the game where like the world's literally crumbling behind them, and just kind of, it sounds like the game's going to be like a really big mind job, if you know what I mean. It's it's going to have shooting, it's going to have monsters. I know that they are playing with limited ammo and having to run away and hide from a lot of the enemies versus being able to blast your way through the game, but I don't know. I think I'm looking forward to those psychological aspects, and I hope they play on it a lot. Either way, hopefully I'm a fan of it. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Me too. All right. So that's about it that I definitely wanted to touch on for Microsoft. I'm excited for The Witcher 3, but I don't have a whole lot of expectations because
it looks awesome.
I didn't get into the previous games, but
okay.
You know, that was because I haven't played them. I have the first one on my PC, and I haven't touched it. So.
Okay.
And yeah, I just want to mention Shape Up. I think it's cool that they have these exercise games that are interactive. Even though I probably won't get one, I think it's a cool thing to do.
Yeah, is that the one that uses the Kinect and like those guys who are like doing the push-ups and like stuff was piling up on their back and?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything to get people fit, I could use it. I should probably play it.
Yeah, so should I. It would be good motivation.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. There's probably a whole slew of indie games as well that we should talk about.
Ooh, you know what they showed footage for? I think it was world premiere footage at the Microsoft conference. Was a game called Inside, which is the next game from the people who made Limbo.
Ooh,
Oh my
I
gosh,
did
it
hear
looks
about this.
so good. It's a fairly short trailer. Um, it just looks incredible again. Like the art direction is spot on. It's more than just black and white. They added they added a couple of colors into it, but it's got like these scenes where there's like these spotlights hanging from the ceiling, and the characters walking, and there's like people in the background, and they're kind of like marching, like they're like little drones. And so when the spotlight shines down on the character, he's got to start like walking like he's like a little drone. It's like something out of dreams or nightmares. It looks so. Oh, and there's like the scene where there's like this glass, and all these people are up against the glass, and they're all like looking down at something. Oh my God! It
Yeah,
just it
it
just
has a
plays with your imagination. It's so
yeah,
good.
it has a tremendous atmosphere about it, and
Yes.
Limbo had that in spades. Absolutely, yes, definitely want to play that.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, cool. Well, we're probably missing something, but we may as well wrap up with Microsoft
Yeah,
for a
it's
while.
okay.
All right, how about Sony? Anything stick out for you for Sony?
One game.
Yeah.
Two games.
2 games.
Um,
2 1 games.
2 1 games. Bloodborne. I played Demon Souls, I played Dark Souls, I played Dark Souls 2, and so to realize, or finally have the confirmation that Sony realized that they kind of let the Souls series slip away with them when they didn't like publish Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, but to know that they went, to the director of like the original 2 games and said like, hey, we want you to, make something big, make it dark, make it Souls-like, but make it unique, and that's actually what happened, and that looks to be what Bloodborne is. It amazes me. Did you see the trailer for that yet? It's just a CG trailer, but
Yeah, I did.
and it looks dark and disturbing and Souls series-esque, and I'm pumped for it. I've seen a couple of clips online of actual gameplay footage from it, and it almost looks like they still have a lot of fine-tuning and refining to do on like the combat end of it. But it's one of those games where because it's running on like a PS4, all the visuals are even more shadowy and like contrasted, and everything looks really crisp. And the city that the player character is walking around in just looks like dirty and desolate and diseased, and it looks amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't remember too much from the trailer, so I don't have much to add to that.
Yeah, it's just kind of like a run through of like the city, and you see some people getting stabbed.
Good things, all good things.
Yeah, super dark fantasy to the fullest.
Yeah.
They did like a big Destiny thing. One thing that I kept noticing at like Sony's presentation is that whatever auditorium they were hosting in had like screens that looked like they just stemmed all the way really far around the audience. And so whenever they were like showing like full screen video, and it took up like the whole wall of it, it was just, I just can't imagine what it was like sitting there. It would be like IMAX times 2 somehow,
Yeah. Well, there's that OmniMax at the Museum of Science and Industry here in Chicago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it wraps around you like this. It comes up points at your peripheral. So that's called the OmniMax. There's one, I think it's actually called Super OmniMax. It's in Japan, and the screen goes, let's see if I can do this in the camera. If you're sitting here, the screen is like this, so it's below you as well as above you.
Oh, wow.
And then it comes around the sides too. But yeah, the Sony stage had this huge wraparound, and there were a lot of videos that were trying to capture the whole thing. It was just hanging back. And it was like, nah, just focus on the center.
Yeah. So they had Destiny. They showed gameplay for Little Big Planet, the Bloodborne trailer. They showed some footage of the Order, I want to say 1886, which looked cool. The graphics in that game, again, look amazing. At the end, they showed the Uncharted 4 trailer, which it looks really... I mean, it's hard to say what it really looks like.
It's a teaser trailer.
Yeah, it looks dark. It looks like it could be Drake's final journey, whatever that means. And I don't know.
If they be...
Uncharted's always good. I'm sure it's going to be an amazing game with even better visuals, I know that you were a big fan of Uncharted. over The Last of Us, which they showed some footage for the remaster. They showed a little bit of footage or a trailer for Grand Theft Auto 5 running on PS4, which I feel like everybody knew was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like we said, the one thing they didn't show was Last Guardian. I did feel like, unlike Microsoft, Sony did inevitably have that lull in the middle where they talked about numbers too much. They brushed over the PS Vita TV, which will, and their PlayStation Now service, which could be really cool if the internet can handle the latency and stuff like that. I don't know. They've got so much stuff going on, and all of it's really awesome. I felt like their press conference was really, really good. Not quite as solid as Microsoft's, but the games that they have coming out just...
Yeah, they made a big deal of mentioning, I think they said that they announced more than 70 games.
Wow, okay.
Which, I was trying to go through this list here, and it doesn't even look like 70, but... it's
less or more?
It looks like less, but I think that's just because that's all that's on this one page, and the rest of the games are elsewhere. Now, I couldn't quite tell, and I'm having a hard time finding it here. One game that I've been paying attention to via Steam that I was really surprised to see come up on stage, and I thought it was at Sony's conference, but I might be incorrect. No Man's Sky.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, that was really big. That was towards the end of the press conference. You want to talk about that one for a little bit? Do you have anything to say about that one? Okay.
I'm really excited. I'm really excited for it. It seems like in the same vein as something like Star Citizen, except it's got a completely different purpose. It's more exploration-based, it seems. The gimmick, the setup for the game, is that it's entirely procedurally generated.
Right.
The guy came out on stage and said that it's just him and like 5 of his other buddies in the UK making this game, and so it's a really small development team, and what they're leveraging is a game that creates a universe unique every time a new person starts up the game. And I shouldn't say universe, I should say planet. In a universe. So everybody starts on a unique planet. That planet then gets added to the universe that everybody else plays in. And as you explore, you experience new planets, or you explore the planets that other people have created just simply by starting the game. And it's all supposed to run super fluidly.
Right.
You're supposed to be able to get out of your ship, walk around on a planet, hop back into the ship, fly up through the atmosphere, out into space, have a dogfight, go land on another planet, and explore that planet. No load screens. I totally believe that's possible because I've been playing Just Cause 2 quite a bit, and you can hijack a plane, fly straight up into the sky, hop out of the plane, and crash into the water. No load screens. And it's a huge island, and even though a universe is a much larger place than an island than Panau, the setting of Just Cause, there's a few years development ahead of it. PC games also tend to be able to take advantage of stuff like that, and I thought because it was with Sony, it meant that it was going to be coming out on the PlayStation. But again, these are particulars that I don't know about. Anyway,
I believe it's slated for PS4 also.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, it just sounds like a fantastic journey and exploration game. There are little creatures that run around each planet. There's giant dogfights you can have in space stations. I don't know the full scale of the game, but I think that's the point. So nobody knows what the full scale of the game is. You're just going to be running around, mining, exploring, killing, and surviving, like you would do in pretty much any game, except that the world itself is constantly evolving. There's constantly something to go see and to go explore and discover, which is very exciting. And the art style is very vibrant. It's a nice departure from the dour, gray and brown aesthetic that we see in a lot of newer games.
Yeah, it's cool seeing the footage with like the tree tops being kind of like a reddish or bluish color and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the wildlife and whatnot. Yeah, I guess the thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm pretty excited for the game. The thing that concerns me is So you're walking around and you can there's animals there and there's water to swim in and like I get you can get into your ship and stuff like that. There's even some planets where there's buildings and whatnot, and I'm just wondering like what all.
What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, like let's just throw some ideas out there. Let's say you can do like an inventory of like you can take a soil sample or you can let's say you can be friendly to the animals, or like maybe you can get skins, or not that game has to be violent, but let's just say you can learn about the world and the plants and the corporations maybe that have set up shop there and stuff like that. But still, like, what are you doing with that information or the materials you're gathering or whatnot? I just like, do you think a world like this needs to have a storyline? Do you think players, if this is a is this supposed to be like a big multiplayer thing or?
That's actually a good question. No Man's Sky.
Because people, if people are in this world, this persistent-ish world together, people are going to make their own stories, and I think that's amazing, especially if you can create corporations and clans and, upgrade your ships and stuff like that. Like if they introduce at least a little bit of like an EVE Online element to it, it could become huge. But I'm afraid of getting bored in it, and I haven't played it yet.
Sure. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I know a couple other games like this. I think there's a game called Starforge.
Okay.
There's another game called Rust. Some of
Rust
these
looks
games,
amazing. I never got to play it.
I think it's still in alpha, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And Starforge is a game where you get to create your fort, and you do that via mining minerals in the game, and you're just trying to survive on this planet. You can go hop to another planet, and I think it's procedurally generated as well. That game has options, however. You can play in the MMO style with a whole bunch of other people. You can do like a capture the flag. You can do defend your fort, or you can do local or private multiplayer, where you just invite your friends to play. You either fight each other, or you do the like an assault wave style defense game.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and I'm trying to look it up here on the website, what the multiplayer aspects of No Man's Sky are. It's funny because I'm the first person who gets bored in an open world game when there's nothing to do.
That's how I am too, yeah.
But I also love the idea of a game that's just open for you to explore. And my issue is just there being nothing worth discovering.
Right. I guess the thing that I'm scarred by, and I don't know if you had this experience, was you remember Mass Effect 1 when you can land on the planets and you just walk around and there's nothing to do, like you find
there's one mineral location.
Yeah, a mineral or a droid or a satellite or something, and then you're like, all right, I'm out of here. And I was just like, I think when I envisioned that game, I envisioned a lot more, and I'm just hoping that No Man's Sky isn't that, but with trees and animals.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, I guess realistically, if you're exploring a universe that's procedurally generating itself, there's nothing that says or guarantees that there should be a bazillion things to do on every planet. That's just not realistic. It's like if we took a rocket to the moon right now and there's not going to be anything. If they can somehow convey that atmosphere of like, holy crap, I'm standing on a planet that nobody's ever been on, be it the visuals, the music, the combinations of the two. Maybe you can plop down your own little flag that other people can find later, and just know that you were there first. Like, that kind of stuff could be really, really cool. And, like, yeah, maybe you don't need to have a checklist of objectives to do on every planet. I can see how the atmosphere alone could sell it, and it may very well.
Yeah. That's just a link to the about of the website there, or the about of the game for the website. It doesn't explain very much about what you have to do. It says, every solar system, planet, ocean, and cave is filled with danger, and you are vulnerable. Your ship and suit are fragile. Every encounter can test your skills to the limit. There's dogfighting. You can explore uncharted solar systems and catalog unique forms of life. Every planet's landscape is different from the next and populated by a series never before encountered. Find ancient artifacts that could reveal the secrets behind the universe, and choose whether or not you want to share these discoveries. It doesn't go into much about how you interact with the other people in the game, or what you actually gain from either sharing or surviving.
Yeah, even just the screenshots though on this website are yet again just they're kind of jaw-dropping in their scope, especially that one towards the bottom with all the big ships in space and whatnot, and just yeah.
And I think this is a new genre of video games that are emerging, even though it's clearly not new, but it's coming into its own now. This procedurally generated style, massive space/planetary exploration. We're getting to the point where computers and development can handle these sorts of massive worlds with tons of people playing them, and we're seeing games like No Man's Sky or Starforge. There are a couple others on Steam, I can't remember what they are, where there's so much care, where the player doesn't just interact but shapes the world itself. It's going to be interesting to see what comes of games like No Man's Sky. Is it a hit? Does it maintain a small cult status? Does it maintain a huge cult status? And how does that affect the rest of the gaming industry? It's really hard to say right now.
I think
I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
What else from Sony did you see?
You might be chewing up your bandwidth over there. When you have that website open, sometimes I can hear you, but it comes through like a little bit robotic, you know?
Oh, really?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I just killed it, so hopefully it was bad.
I don't know what kind of a connection you got. I'm on Wi-Fi, though. I'm not plugged in, so I'm always like, scared about that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I'm on Wi-Fi too, but it should be strong signal.
Yeah, you sound better now.
Okay, cool.
Anyways, yeah, you want to move on? I mean, unless you want to, I don't know that we have to like dive super deep into EA or like Ubisoft's press conference.
EA had almost nothing I was interested in.
Yeah, that was kind of boring to me too. Ubisoft, so EA had like Battlefield Hardline, and that was their big thing. Ubisoft had more footage of The Division, and
Assassin's Creed.
Oh yeah, Assassin's Creed, which looks cool.
They had Far Cry.
Oh yeah, they had Far Cry 4. Ubisoft would have wowed me if they announced Beyond Good and Evil 2, but of course that didn't happen either.
Yeah.
Oh, Mirror's Edge, that was EA.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that was one thing I was definitely excited for. I loved Mirror's Edge. So yeah, I'm excited to see the next one. Yeah.
Did you ever play the mobile version of that game?
No. Is it great?
Yeah, it's really good. It's I don't know if it made its way to Android, but I had it on iOS for a while when I had an iPhone, and it's kind of like it's like a side-scroller game, and you kind of like flick up with your thumb to like make her jump, and down makes her like slide under stuff, and it was almost like the feel of that game somehow translated really well into a 2D side-scroller. It blew my mind how good it was.
I can see that. I mean, honestly, like the weird thing about Mirror's Edge was that it was first person, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's throwing me off," and they would have preferred it to be 2D platformer because it's
weird. Okay.
You can see, or maybe third person, but either way. Just a couple of things on PlayStation I wanted to point out. N++, really excited for. Love the hell out of the first one. It's just a 2D platformer. You play a ninja. Did you play it?
Which game?
N+.
Oh, no, I didn't. I know of it.
Okay, yeah. You can have up to 4 people playing. It's 2D platformer, single pane, single frame. And you just have to get to a door that's at the end of the level.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so you can have 4 people play, and it has really loose, really fluid physics. So you can leap really far and float for a while, and yet it's still really challenging. It's cool. Another game, Night in the Woods, which
they showed that at Sony's conference?
Yeah, it's for PS4.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, for some reason I don't recall it. Do you know about it, or have you?
I don't know much about it. I read the description. It's one of those games where you don't do anything, which are games that I love. And literally, you spend a night in the woods. You're like a squirrel, and you encounter all sorts of weird folk in the forest throughout the night.
Yeah. One thing that Sony did that I thought was really cool. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say more?
No, go for it.
was I believe the name of the game was Entwined, and it was a
Yes.
indie developed game. They had the developers on stage showing off the game, and then they did that. I don't want to call it an Apple thing, but it feels like an Apple thing where when they were done with the presentation, they were like, "You can go download it now on the
Yeah.
PlayStation Network for both Vita and PS3 and 4. I forget. Anyways, it's available. Go pay
Go
$10
get
for it
it.
if you like this. Yeah, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess they did that for a bunch of games. I think there were like 4 or 5 or something like that. That they were like, and it's available now, and it's available now, which is cool. It's a really
Interesting.
fun thing to do,
Yeah.
especially in this day and age where so much of the industry is immediate. It's nice for them to announce a game and say, so go ahead and play it.
Yeah.
Um, okay, cool. Looking over my list here. Anything else that you wanted to mention in terms of games?
In regards to, well,
Or should we hit Nintendo?
yeah, let's hit Nintendo real quick. I could probably breeze through it because I could go on and on about it. So
Cool.
for me, it was, like I said, the Legend of Zelda Wii U trailer. It's like
Absolutely.
30 seconds long, but for some reason just captured my imagination to no end. In the email I sent you, it gave me that Ocarina of Time vibe again.
Yeah.
They've got a really cool action role-playing game called Xenoblade Chronicles X coming out for Wii U. I believe, I don't know if it's a direct sequel, but it's at the very least a sequel or a spiritual successor to Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii. They've got a new shooter coming out called Splatoon, where you play the character. Did you see that footage?
I did. It looks adorable.
Shooting ink everywhere, and then you can like swim through your ink, and it's all about gaining territory and whatnot on the map. It looks really, really cool. This wasn't in the press conference, but at E3, Miyamoto said that they're working on a new Star Fox game.
Oh,
They've acknowledged that people still really, really, really want a new Metroid game, and that they're tossing ideas around about, just kind of like whether to tackle a 2D Metroid or a Prime-style Metroid first, that they're really open to both. There's the ex-Team Ninja director Itagaki, I forget his name. He's the guy who made like the Dead or Alive series in Ninja Gaiden. He went and he founded his own game studio called I don't know if it's Valhalla or Valhalla Studios. Anyway, for a long, long time, since about 2008 or so, he's been working on a game called Devil's Third, which nobody knew what was going on with it after THQ went under, and it turns out the game's now a Wii U exclusive, and it's like an incredibly bloody and brutal third-person shooting / sword hack and / action game. I think it looks really cool and really fun, and I kind of want to check it out just because I like him as a video game director.
sure.
However, I've got no idea as to, the game looks good to me. I don't know. I haven't played it, so,
Yeah, it looks. It stands out from the offerings of Nintendo because it's the only violent, vulgar game of the bunch.
Yeah, well, unless you count Bayonetta 2.
Okay,
which,
fair enough.
The big surprise for that, which I'm so happy that they did, is that the first game is coming along with the second game. So you buy Bayonetta 2 and you get Bayonetta 1. I believe it's a download code. And they did stuff in like Bayonetta 1. I believe they, like different costume packs and stuff like that. I think they polished it up even a little bit more. So I haven't played Bayonetta 1. I always wanted to. And so maybe that thing that kind of drives me there. Obviously, we can't not mention Super Smash Bros. Wii U.
Of course. With the Mii feature.
Looks incredible. What's the new feature? Oh, with the figures?
With the Mii, you're gonna be able to import your Mii and fight as your character.
The Mii. Yeah, and then they did that thing. Their figurine platform is called my bottom Amoeba, and the whole thing where like their figures have a computer chip in them, and you can put the figure on the Wii U gamepad, and it transmits data into certain games, and certain games transmit data back into the figurine. All really, really cool. They held a Smash tournament alongside E3 where they had like some players, like duking it out in front of like an auditorium full of people. That was like a really huge event. There was Yoshi's Woolly World. It was one of those games that I honestly don't give a crap about. But
yeah, but it showcases Nintendo's like endless creativity.
Yes, yeah. There's like a Toad There's some game with Toad, the Toad
Yeah,
Mario
like
character. Where it's
Captain
like,
Toad Adventure. Hold on.
yeah, hunting treasure,
Captain
something or other.
Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. And
Yeah.
yeah, like if you had ever described these games to me, I wouldn't be interested. But when you see them in action, you think
Yes.
that looks like so much fun.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Nintendo has proven that they are the masters of games,
Yeah.
of fun games.
And if you
Um,
want to, oh, go on.
I was just gonna say also Mario Maker looks awesome.
Oh yes, it looks incredible. I watched Nintendo did this really cool thing during this year's E3 where alongside the conference on I don't know if it was Nintendo.com or whatever, but they had their Treehouse, which is kind of like it's like their American team who does a lot of like the translating for like the Japanese games and stuff like that. Anyways, they had these guys come talk with the Japanese developers all week long and showcase the games in depth. So for all the games that were announced on Nintendo's platform, every game probably got approximately 8 hours or so of like footage shown for it over the course of the week that you could just watch on their Twitch channel or on Nintendo.com. And so it was like they might not have had as many games announced as say like Sony or Microsoft, but man, what they showed you was an in-depth look at every single one, and it was straight from them, straight from the developers, and you didn't have to like rely on like another website SKU that may or may not exist like during a
Yeah,
presentation or whatnot. I really appreciated it. I watched a
very
lot
cool.
of it. Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay, cool. Anything else from Nintendo that you wanted to point out?
Not really, not unless you want to use them as a segue in talking about, frame rates and resolutions and things like that. If you still wanted to touch topic on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, actually, Nintendo segues into another thing I wanted to bring up.
Sure.
I have this thought, I'm having this issue with franchise games. And one of the things that had been bugging me about Nintendo was that the games that you wanted to play on the Wii U were Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros., Zelda, and Mario.
Okay. Fair enough.
And they were like the 10th or 9th incarnation of these games.
Yeah.
And true, Mario Galaxy was incredible. Mario Galaxy 2 was incredible. But I've been bored of Smash Brothers for a while. And for as much as I love Zelda, it's like it's not as much of a pull for me until I see that the game is really going to be incredible. But I feel like Nintendo's been kind of resting on its laurels and saying, here are the games that you definitely want to play for our new system, and it's games you've played before.
Right. Yeah.
And similarly, we've got like our 13th Assassin's Creed. We've got we're on number who knows what for Call of Duty or Battlefield. We're on to Halo 5. We're on a second re-release for all the other Halos. There's a lot of remakes. We're getting the remake of The Last of Us for the PlayStation. We're getting a Phantom Dust remake, which nobody asked for.
Yeah, I wonder if that's going to be a remake or a reboot, but I digress. Go on.
I was told that it's a little bit of both. That it's
Okay.
mostly the old game,
Oh.
completely new graphics,
Okay.
like completely rebuilt, but with some new stuff as well. Maybe like a third of it's going to be new. I was
We're
just
on
wondering
the
if
10th Mortal Kombat.
we're on the 10th Mortal Kombat, and the 14th Final Fantasy.
Which I am so I'm pumped for the 15th one, but yeah.
Yeah, official number, whatever. But these are just not games that excite me any longer. And I was wondering, because these are the games that are promoted first. They're the games that get center stage, they get the big presentation. I was wondering if you felt that maybe, because this is my thought, that these games are overshadowing the rest of the industry.
Okay.
Or if they represent not necessarily a stagnation, but like a business necessity, or how do I phrase it? My other trouble is that games that are this big cannot be successful. They spend too much money making the game and advertising for the game. They don't actually end up making too much money for the companies. But
go on.
but they're system sellers and they're big deals and they attract a lot of attention. And I think what we're starting to see is that games like games for PlayStation Network or Xbox Live Arcade, these downloadable games, these smaller games where it's like 5 or 6 people developing the game, even though something like, say, even like Star Citizen, which is a massive, like, multi-million-dollar game, is developed by a very small group of people, it feels a lot like the movie industry, where they've started making these giant AAA or giant feature films, or feature video games that are more and more expensive, more and more elaborate, and more generic as they go along. There was someone who made a really good point and drew a lot of parallels for all the Marvel superhero movies, saying you can interchange any one of the superheroes in any of these movies, and they're not any different. And they all make a lot of money, but only enough to justify a sequel, and not necessarily.
And toys.
And toys, and yeah, they're just like money-generating machines. They're not artistically interesting. They're not mechanically interesting, and yet there are these flagships. They are these pagods of the industry, and they don't do very much for me. But games like
tentpole features, as you would, popcorn flicks.
Yeah, they're tentpoles.
Yeah,
absolutely. But they also are unsustainable because of the cost and the scale at which they operate. I was wondering if you were having thoughts on the issue as well.
Yeah, I guess, let me think about where to begin. I guess, first of all, I played, for the sake of context, I played the first Assassin's Creed game in a time when it was getting very mixed reviews because it was new, and that was Ubisoft's first foray into this gameplay genre, I guess, that they sort of, I feel like they created with that series. And I played it, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I was curious to see where the storyline was going, but I sort of had my fill, and I haven't played an Assassin's Creed since the first one, even though I know that every single time they made a new one, they added features, they added gameplay, they reiterated it upon it to the point where Assassin's Creed 4 comes out, and even though now it's really the same thing, except you can hunt whales with your ship and you're a pirate, people have been playing the same thing for years and years and years and years. Mm-hmm. On the flip side of that, I kind of feel like with, for example, again, something like Assassin's Creed, where it's had yearly installments pretty much since its inception, that a company like Ubisoft, with that, finally, they found, I don't want to say they're Mario in like the mascot sense, but kind of how you were mentioning that, Mario's been around forever, and Nintendo keeps reiterating on this gameplay concept that they, pretty much launched back on like the NES, and it was like Ubisoft found something like that. They discovered these climbing and vaulting and running and mission setup mechanic scenarios, and that like people were in love with them, and that there was like almost like this addictive nature to it, and that they had a good enough storyline going on to the point where people would want to play the next one to find out what was going to happen, kind of like like a good chain of like movie sequels, if such a thing even exists. And that's why they're doing it. I heard something recently that suggested that the good side of something like Assassin's Creed for Ubisoft is the fact that they are at the point where, despite the marketing muscle behind them and whatnot, that they are making money. And because they are making money on them, they're able to do things like create new Rayman games, or like Child of Light, which just came out recently. Yeah. Like beautiful games using like their Ubi art engine or whatever they call it. And I think that's really cool if that's the case, where they can set some of that money aside from Assassin's Creed sales and like do new interesting things. I guess I'm more burnt out on I don't even know if this is going to answer your question, but like genres, like shooters in general.
Sure.
I'm done. I'm done with them. I loved Battlefield Bad Company 2, and like it was like the first game that I had ever played, where you could like completely like level buildings and stuff like that in the middle of like multiplayer gameplay, and that's been reiterated on, and I don't know what version of Battlefield we're on now, but it's just like I'm so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Yeah, it used to be the RTS used to be one of my bread and butter genres, but after what StarCraft and Warcraft 3, I haven't had the interest to pick one of them up. But I used to play Command and Conquer, so
Right.
Warcraft and StarCraft, and any number of the in between, like uh, Total Annihilation was another one, Age of
Yeah.
Empires. Yeah, I played them all, but other than Rome Total War, I mean, there's not been much to come around to keep that genre alive. And yeah, there's always something very visceral about a first-person shooter. So there's always something like foundationally interesting about it. Like I played through BioShock Infinite,
Same
um,
here.
and I have my issues with the game, but it was engaging throughout because you're in that point of view, which is very familiar to you being a human
Yeah.
being. um, but yeah, like I see a shooter and I think this is either going to be doing something interesting or take me through a fun story. Otherwise, move on. The games that have captured my imagination lately are games like Dear Esther. It's a first-person game, but you
I've
don't.
always wanted to play that. Yeah.
I highly suggest it, but
Okay.
not everyone's going to like it. In fact, very few people are going to like it. You can't do anything. You can't jump. You can't run.
Yeah.
You can kind of zoom in on things. You can't pick stuff up. You can't move things around. Um, you just walk through this environment, and as you go through, there's a voiceover. It doesn't tell you what's going on, but it's like soft reflection from this person's life, or from actually the lives of 2 or 3 different people that you're experiencing at one time, and/or journal entries. The landscape is gorgeous. It's very haunting, and it's actually something I'd like to get into a little bit more at another time. But it certainly questions whether or not the experience is a video game or an interactive narrative, and that's just hair splitting at a certain point. But games that are not just reiterations of a genre, that are not just like bigger, badder versions of a particular genre, but games that have something to say. I don't want to quite go that artsy and pretentious about it, but
Huh?
Tale of Two Sons was incredible. And it
Oh,
was
I
just,
played the beginning of it. I know you loved it. Yeah.
I loved it. And it's a 3-hour game. Same with Dear Esther. Like, it's a not a bite size, but it's a digestible experience.
Yeah.
Whereas you get into something like Grand Theft Auto or even Just Cause, it's such a large game that you're not, or Skyrim. It's such a large game that you're not playing the game so much as like you're just doing chores in a world set.
Right. Yeah. Chore is a good word to describe it.
So I guess that's a little off topic from worrying about what these giant AAA games are doing to the industry, because I feel like it's a bubble that's about to burst.
It
You
is.
mentioned that like Assassin's Creed might be giving Ubisoft the extra funds to make games like Children of Light or Child of Light. That may or may not be true. I don't know the numbers for how much money Assassin's Creed makes them, but I do know that the guys who made Limbo haven't made Assassin's Creed.
Very true.
And they're getting by just fine, and they've made beautiful games.
A lot of people I know are also beginning to leave these companies after they finish, like, big budget projects like that to go build teams that are going to make the next Dear Esther and things like that.
Kevin Levine's a fine example.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? He does BioShock. He blows the world a storm, and then says, "This method or this formula of game making is unsustainable. We have to scale back." And so he leaves because he crushes his company and decides he's going to make something smaller. And those are, honestly, that's my personal interest. Those are the smaller games that I'm interested in. I actually have a friend who works at Sony. It's his job to go recruit these indie developers and get them to make games for Sony.
Very cool.
Very cool. Very cool position. He's an awesome guy. And so I'm really excited about Sony because one of my best friends is the guy deciding what indie games get on the PlayStation. And his taste in video games is spectacular.
Nice.
And he's been involved with getting Everybody's Going to the Rapture, or Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, which is...
I hear it looks amazing.
it's gorgeous.
Beautiful, yeah.
The trailer's boring because there's nothing to show you other than a beautiful landscape.
Yeah.
But those are the people who made Dear Esther. And
I think. Go on.
well, it's silly for me to say like the games that I like are the games where you don't do anything. Like Journey is in my top 3, I think, of all time. And there's no interact button in Journey. You know, you're just going through this experience, but it has so much to engage with in an environment and in its philosophical points that it's a rich emotional experience, and it only takes about an hour and a half to go through, and I've played it 3 or 4 times because I can't get enough. Whereas I couldn't play through the introduction to Assassin's Creed 2.
Okay.
I got furious, actually. I rage quit. Not because I couldn't do something, but because it wouldn't let me do anything. It was 4 hours, and I was just getting the next piece of the tutorial. I was like, I could have played through Journey 2 or 3 times by now.
Yeah.
That's not to say I don't like long games, but those longer games have to be rewarding in a way that those shorter games are not. And I haven't found a long game that is truly that much more rewarding. And those are the games that get all the attention. And that's not so much a problem because I'm getting the games that I want. There's plenty of industry for it. But I'm just curious to know, maybe I don't even have a good question for it, but it's just a curiosity to me that we're seeing 2014's E3 with how many remakes or how many sequels and how many new IPs did we see that looked that interesting.
Yeah. I've got a question for you along these lines that maybe you can shed some light on. Do you feel, and not that it necessarily matters what the general public's perception of like gaming or gamers is, like gaming as we know it, not that it matters what their perception of it necessarily is, but when all of these like huge budget at this point sequels and reiterations with like massive marketing campaigns are about to like hit the market and stuff like that, I don't really watch a lot of television and whatnot, but I can only imagine that to a certain extent a lot of TV is flooded with like commercials for like the next Battlefield or Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed, and then the general public who's not necessarily a gamer on the level that you or I are on, like see that as like that is video games. That's what gaming is. That's what their kids are doing or what they're going to be doing, and that's so far from reality, but that's their only perception of it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true for just about any art, actually.
Okay.
There's a public perception of it that is unfortunate.
Yeah.
That is unfortunately inaccurate. I think it's definitely true. I don't watch a whole lot of TV myself, but when you go to see a movie in a movie theater, you get the commercials rolling beforehand, and oftentimes, very recently, there's a trailer for a video game, and it's for those giant AAA titles. And they're almost always like violent or overly aggressive, and questionable in terms of social consciousness.
Can you while you are thinking, can you imagine though, if you went to the movie theater and instead of seeing a preview for Titanfall and all the manpower that went into that, if you were just engulfed with the sands from Journey, maybe just the music or the silence, and then just 10 seconds of the character just kind of like gliding across that, and then it was over, and it said like, like PS3 or whatever, like instead, like what people would think about what games were,
Mm-hmm. I could imagine that, and I know what it would do to me.
You just start bawling. You just like
this, and honestly, like I couldn't even get somebody to sit down to play that game with controller in hand and make them understand what the game was about. Like, in that way, gaming is such a personal and isolated experience.
It is, oftentimes, yeah.
Like Brothers, Tale of Two Sons, Journey, Dear Esther, this is not a game that I can sit down and play with someone else, or these are not games that I can sit down and play with someone else and share that experience that I'm having with the game, because it is a one-on-one interaction. And right now, it's like the peak for me. those are the games that are hitting the stride in terms of artistic sensibility and entertainment. But those aren't the games that people see in movie theaters or on TV. They see Call of Duty, they see Titanfall, which, by the way, nobody's even talking about it anymore. It's not that old. It's just completely disappeared.
Yeah.
I was kind of who cares about it anyway, and I feel a little bit justified because it's already forgotten. But whatever, I'm not here to tell everyone I told you so. But it's not even the point. Like, I don't, if you want to enjoy Titanfall, go ahead. I don't care.
Right.
I'm
sure
I'm
enough
glad,
people are.
I'm glad you're enjoying video games, of course.
Yeah.
But there's, of course, a public perception of the industry that's skewed. And that's because they don't get into it. It's like music. If all you did was watch MTV, you'd think music was terrible. If all you did was watch, the top 10 grossing movies of the year, you'd think cinema was terrible.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like any other art form in that if you want to find something, if you want to find the truly provocative, truly interesting and creative and rewarding experiences, in these cases the cream doesn't rise to the crop. Cream doesn't rise to the top. It's the cream of the crop. Cream rises to the crop. It's the most polished that is most noticeable. Those are the ones with the most money. They're the ones that get out to the most number of people. And they need to, because in order to recoup the cost that went into making the game, and oddly enough, the cost that they encountered getting it to other people needs to be recouped. So, yeah, there's a public perception of video games. And actually, I followed Roger Ebert for the last several years of his life, and had a strong disagreement with him about the quality of video games. And he was like, "Well, there hasn't been a video game made yet that is as good as, say, Murnau's Tales, Song of Two Humans." And it's like, you're wrong, but you wouldn't know about this game.
Exactly. Yes.
There's no way he would know unless someone sat down with him and showed him the game, and then he spent 4 hours playing Shadow of the Colossus or Eco or Journey. He knows of video games as, from Pac-Man to, Doom. And those have their own qualities to them, and they introduced an art form that can't be talked about in the way that movies or television or music or painting or any other art form can be, because it's interactive and it requires an entirely new vernacular, and it's something that's going to take a really long time for the general public to pick up on and understand and accept. And even if it's accepted, it's an art form that's also changing very rapidly. And unlike the movie industry, the indie game industry in the video game world is as big or as strong or as visible as the AAA games within the industry. So it's a different beast entirely, and it's very exciting to be a part of and to watch and engage with. But you have to want to do it, and you have to do it. Otherwise, you're not going to see what's going on. You're not going to find the really rewarding material.
Yeah. No, I'm here. I completely agree. I was just, you were going good. I was going to let you go.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel sad that there are. This sounds so bad and pretentious, but how do I word this without sounding? Something along the lines of feeling sad for people who only know Angry Birds and literally only know Call of Duty, and that's fine. If that's your jam, as they say now, and that's all you want out of gaming, awesome. But kind of like when you find an incredible film, like a film that just blows you away for whatever reason, and is an incredible emotional experience that you want to be able to share with somebody else. It's you run into those games that you just you hope that people find the time to enjoy before their time is up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually, I mean, it's a trouble that's as old as like language itself. Not to get too ridiculous about it, but Plato's allegory of the cave is basically all about that. It's about getting people to the more highly realized, or to the truth, or to a greater state of being. And if you break it down, you bring it to the art world, and you're like, if all you see is Who Wants to Marry Harry or Two and a Half Men, but you haven't seen The Wire or Deadwood or The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, you're missing out.
Yeah.
And there are people who have seen these shows that really want you to see what they consider to be the better form of art. But, I mean, how do you introduce it to that person then is the next problem. Too much like makes the baby go blind. You can't just slap them in the face with it. You've got to ease them into it, and that's also assuming that you know better than them. It's this holier-than-thou issue. It's like, I have seen the light, and I am bringing it to you, and you will love this, and you will be a better person for it. I will have brought it to you. And other people are saying, but I like this show, and I'm fine with it. And you think,
stop watching garbage television.
yeah, stop Call of Duty. There are better games out there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, just to go ahead and segue into the next part of this, there are certain things that those games get right. It's just like any of the other big action movies of Hollywood. They've got a polish to them that no one else can replicate. They run at the higher resolutions, at the better frame rates, and they have all those resources to make them do it. And the resolution frame rate issue is actually something I'm really interested by, because if you're running a game at 1080p, you compare it to a game that's running at 920 or whatever, it's going to be pretty similar. Like, it's about 100 lines difference of resolution. It's not much. You're not really going to notice. The frame rate will make a bigger difference. But it is interesting to note that we had systems in the last generation that could run 1080p games. We've got the next generation of consoles out, and it's a big deal that they're running games at 1080p. And the television technology is past that. We're getting ready to jump into 4K.
Yeah.
And the Xbox One, if I'm not mistaken, is 4K ready. I think the PS4 is also 4K ready. But the conversations we're having now are about whether or not it can run 1080p at 60 frames a second. It seems like we should be having a different conversation. We should be talking about higher numbers here. Especially, the gaming PC that I built will run 2K at 60 frames or 120 frames a second. It'll be breaking a sweat at that point, but
the fans just like going crazy.
Yeah, I've got a solid cooling system, but
yeah.
I only had so much money. I didn't build a beast, but I built a game that I could run Tomb Raider at full resolution with no issue.
Yeah, it sounds like you built something nice, something solid.
It's nice. It's an i5 3370. I've got 16 gigs of RAM. I've got 3 terabytes of storage space, and I'm running an Asus NVIDIA 660 Ti. It's a 4 gig video card. It might be 2.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good. It works, and it certainly runs FTL perfectly.
Good to know.
Have you played FTL?
No, but I know what it is. It's like a...
So good. It's basically like playing a Star Trek episode.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. If any combat scene in Star Trek, ship-to-ship combat, it's like that. You have to block against drones, you've got shields, you've got oxygen, and you have to keep all these systems up and running while you're being attacked, and you have to attack at the same time. It requires you to split your attention in 100 directions. And it's really fun to play with someone else because they can be monitoring the other systems. They can be like, we're having problems with the O2, Captain.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's awesome. You just have someone sitting over your shoulder. It's amazing. But I also think it's interesting that Sony built the system that always has the guys running at 1080p. Yeah, in every one of these conversations, it's not. In every one of these conversations, it's Sony is running this game at 1080p at 60 frames a second. Xbox One's 900 frames at 60 frames, or sometimes 30 frames.
Yeah.
It seems like Sony went out of their way to make sure that the system they built could do this at least. And now apparently Microsoft's offered a patch or an upgrade. It's free, of course, download. And it's a development kit patch or whatever. It's going to help a lot of the games run at 1080p. Totally cool. Definitely something they should be doing. It's beautiful to see. I love that the new Microsoft is one that definitely pays very close attention to the details that their fans want.
Yeah, they've learned a lot.
They
since
have.
the unveiling of the Xbox One.
Yeah, when we were running 30 and Nerdy last summer, I wrote that article about how much it would cost to run an Xbox One under their original terms.
Right.
They got rid of all of that, and now it's on par with the PlayStation. They even stopped packaging the Kinect with the system, brought it down to the same price. I mean, at this point, it's just game selection. And that's beautiful. It's a beautiful place to be. And on top of that, one of the things I wanted to point out about E3 this year, there felt like there was no bad blood at all between any of the developers or any of the platforms. Like, everyone was there just for the games. It was really cool to see.
Somebody said, and I forget where I heard this or read this, that the only pot shot that was really taken, supposedly Sony might have taken one at EA, and I don't have a quote or anything like that, which sounded funny because, like, why would they? EA's, creating tons of games for their platforms. But more importantly, at some point, Nintendo made a comment that along the lines of, the people have spoken, and the 3DS is their handheld system of choice. Just totally like slap the Vita in the face, just like hit them while they're down. Like I have a Vita and a 3DS, and I've got some articles that I'm going to launch with the new version of the website about essentially how every single time I'm thinking about actually spending money on a new Vita game, like Nintendo goes and announces something or does something or puts a new game out there or has like an eShop sale, and I end up spending more freaking money on it, and I'm like, damn it, I own a Vita and I cannot play it because of Nintendo.
Portable gaming is something that I haven't really ever gotten into. I had a Game Boy Advance for a while. I loved it. I didn't play it very much, though. I had a DS. I loved it. I didn't play it very much, though. But I am constantly tempted to get a 3DS because there are so many cool games on it.
Yeah.
But I'm also more and more tempted to get a Vita, especially with their cross-platform play, which I think is a brilliant move.
Yeah.
To be able to take the games that you play on that system with you wherever you go and cross-save, or sync-save, whatever it's called. I think that felt like I was living in the future more than the 3D on the 3DS, even though it's really cool and works very well.
Mm-hmm.
But they're about the only two. Well, that's not true. There's also the Shield, the NVIDIA Shield, which apparently is a beast. Every time I read a review on a non-tech and they're comparing portable devices, the Shield wins everything. It's always like the number one. It's either at the top or the bottom of their list of specs, whichever's better. Sometimes it's the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that is, but it's got the same idea. You stream games from your PC onto the Shield, which is sweet. And apparently now you're going to be able to stream from your Shield then to your TV.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, so you're going to be able to play your PC games on your TV, which, I mean, in the near future you're just going to be playing your Steam machine on your TV. But
Anyways,
cool.
it is. I didn't mean to derail us. You were completely right in that it seemed like 99% of the press conference, like everybody was just on good terms with each other. It was truly a celebration about games,
Yeah, it was really nice to see.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then this all started with the frame rate and resolution thing. Like, the next TV I plan to buy is going to be a 4K television. I don't plan to do it for a really long time. My next monitor will be a 4K monitor, but it's not until I get a 4K video card, and that's probably at best a year away.
Okay.
Or at the earliest a year away. But the argument that we're having in the console world is 1080p, and that seems really far behind. And one of the things that I came away from E3 this year thinking was that I'm not sold on the new generation yet.
Okay.
I think both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One could have waited until this year to announce. And probably even the Wii U. In fact, maybe especially the Wii U. Because this would have been a killer launch, right? Could you imagine if they announced the Wii U and said Zelda, Smash Brothers, Mario Kart?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
But instead we got the Wii U. Half the people didn't know the difference between it and the Wii. And then no games.
Yeah.
Or
new versions of old games.
New versions of old games.
Like the upgraded Batman Arkham City version and Mass Effect 3 with a couple extra things or stuff like that.
Yeah, just nothing special. Things that people had already played and completed. But yeah, for as many impressive games and cool stuff that came out of E3 this year, I just thought all of that could have waited until this year. And then we would have had, here's the announcement for the PlayStation 4, and here are all the kick-ass games that are going to come with it. Mm-hmm. Here's the announcement for the Xbox One. Here are all the kick-ass games that would come with it. It would have been a really surprising, really exciting E3 that I feel like they maybe spread over the course of a year. I don't know why that is, but I think it also speaks very highly of the previous generation, which the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 are ancient in terms of video game consoles. They're 7 and 8 years old. Mm-hmm. And they're just as relevant, if not more, than they've ever been.
Because of their library, probably, right? Would you argue?
Library, and, they're still very capable systems. To play a game like Just Cause, where you've got, I forget the size of the map. We did the calculations one time. It's a huge map that has no loading time.
It's a beautiful looking game, too.
It's a beautiful looking game, too, absolutely. So to be able to have that sort of power, and you've got GTA 5 on these systems, and they're not adding anything new to GTA 5 when it comes out on PlayStation 4. They're just upping the resolution a little bit. They're filling in, they're extending the distance that you can see a little bit, but the game's not changing substantially. I think that says a lot about the previous generation rather than the new one.
Yeah, I think sometimes it depends what you want out of your games also, and that's why, real quick side note, it's always funny to me how I'm aware that in every single forum that's like Xbox One and PS4 related, when people are barking on about 720p and 1080p and stuff like that, I realize that the PC master race is just laughing. But games like for example, when I played Far Cry 3, I played it on my PlayStation 3, and I loved it, as I mentioned, and I feel like the gameplay was very, I don't know, it was very complete. I can't imagine how it would have played that much better, for example, like on a PC. But admittedly, the visuals were a muddy, blurry mess. Especially, it just felt like 20 feet in front of the character, and I was just looking at grain and blur, and I got used to it. And so kind of like in getting used to it, that when you accept that that's the way that world looks, you almost start seeing it clearer than it really is. And then when you shift back to those other games that look crisp and like they were built from the ground up for the system versus being like a downgraded PC port, I don't know. I just wonder if people got sick of that, and that's why they wanted like something with extra horsepower in it, like the PS4, And that's why they're upgrading, I guess, to a new console.
Well, and I think you got a good point there. I noticed that when I played BioShock Infinite, I could tell the limitations of the PlayStation.
Okay.
And having not even played it on the PC, I could tell, I was like, this would be clearer.
Yeah.
On a stronger system. I would be able to see farther. There would be more detail here. I felt like the game ran very smoothly on the PlayStation, but I could tell that they sacrificed detail for fluidity, which I think was the right decision to make. Yeah, you're probably right.
The thing about the PS3 that still blows my mind to this day is that they were able to get out, I guess at least graphically, games that looked as good as they did. You know, games like Killzone 2 and 3, like a lot of Sony first-party stuff, Uncharted 2 and 3, The
Yeah.
Last of Us, and they did it all with 256 megabytes of RAM in that system.
Yeah.
And now, I don't know what kind of RAM, but like now the PS4 has 8 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM. It's just like, it's mind-blowing to think just of all the achievements that they did with the cell processor and that little of RAM, you know?
I thought it had 4 gigs. Let me go look it up.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure PS4 is 8 gigs.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah, 8
DDR5.
gigs.
Xbox One is 8 gigs of DDR3, and or it has something called ES RAM in it, which a lot of people were speculating that the ES RAM, granted I don't even know what that means or what that is, in the Xbox One was one of the reasons why it was having kind of like resolution output problems. As of right now, supposedly they were describing it as kind of like there was like a bottleneck effect taking place in trying to like pump out textures and things like that.
That was one of the complaints about the PlayStation 2.
Okay, I believe it. Also ridiculously underpowered that they somehow worked miracles on.
Especially at the end of the PlayStation 2. That system was churning out ridiculous games, and I was told that it was a nightmare to program for. Similar, PlayStation 3 was a nightmare to program for, but it at least had a reason, and you could get something tremendous like The Last of Us out of it. You could get these for Just Cause. If you spent time programming for it, you could do something great with it, whereas the PlayStation 2 was just a nightmare, start to finish. I did a report on it actually back in undergrad, and it was very clear that the GameCube, even though it was a less powerful system, the hardware got out of the way, and it was able to produce a much cleaner image, which you can tell just going from a PlayStation game to a GameCube game. Like, GameCube games are bright and vibrant and clear, and PlayStation's got this muddiness to it that sort of echoed what was going on the Nintendo 64, which I still loved, but it's got some fuzzy, muddy graphics. Like, have you gone back and looked at Ocarina of Time?
Not aside from the 3DS version, which looks good because they upped the res.
They cleaned it up.
Yeah, they cleaned it up, and it's on a smaller screen, so you also don't notice as much. But yeah, I imagine it just looks like a blurry pile of extra mud.
You know, when you're running around the countryside, it's a little bit better. But there are a couple of those moments when you're in a town. And I'm thinking in particular of the iconic image of that church.
Okay.
Remember that low angle early on? There's that church or temple, whatever.
In the main town, in the castle town area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost incomprehensible.
Does it look like a little kid with crayon and watercolor?
Yeah, it looks like a digital watercolor mess.
Okay.
I was having a hard time finding Link to get him to run around. I was like, how did I play this game back then? And some of that is playing it on a new digital television as opposed to the old analog screens. Like the high resolution shows off the graphic inconsistencies, yeah, I mean, we still plug in the 64 every now and then and play rounds of GoldenEye, and some people are amazed that we ever played at such a crappy frame rate with virtually no lines of resolution at certain
points. It's gotta be like 14 frames a second, 4-player split screen or something.
Yeah, it gets rough at times. Yeah, if you're doing grenade launchers in any of the confined spaces, it gets rough. Perfect Dark even more so. But anyway, those are old games. We're talking about E3. I think we're getting pretty much to the end. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Oh, man. No, we derailed ourselves a couple of times. No, but justly. So I don't think that there's any. Let me look at. No, we literally hit it all.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'm comfortable with that.
All right, sounds good. You want any closing thoughts or comments on any of it?
No, I think we hit pretty much everything we needed to hit. It was a really positive E3, a lot of good games. At the same time, a lot of games I wasn't interested in, but nothing that I thought was truly bad.
Yeah.
Nothing that was disappointing other than the lack of certain games, which we already mentioned. Last Guardian, Half-Life 3.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Stuff like that. I was going to say a lack of Japanese RPGs, but that's just me. I'm still a
Yeah.
sucker for them.
Oh yeah, me too.
But
Um,
anyways, yeah.
you can find those. You can find a bunch of those on PC on Steam.
Oh, nice. Okay.
In fact, there's one I can't remember what it's called that is specifically aiming for the Final Fantasy style game.
Oh yeah, that was one thing they announced at E3. Sorry, while you're looking that up, I don't want
Yeah,
to go
yeah.
on too much longer. But there was this game that came out on the PSP probably years ago at this point called Final Fantasy Type Zero. It was oh man, it just looked like an incredible action-based Final Fantasy game. It took place in this city with these kids that were like in this like military school, and it only came out in Japan. And when the Vita came out, like everybody was like again, kind of like barking and screaming, like bring it to Vita, bring it to Vita, upres it, or at least just do a like a North American port of the game, you know, even if it just has to be subtitled for us so we can play it. And that at E3 they were like, we listened to you, and the game is coming stateside on PS4 and Xbox One. And I feel like everyone was like, well, thanks, but we kind of wanted to play this, you know,
Years ago.
yeah, years ago and in the palm of our hands.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's funny.
Sometimes it's funny when companies try so hard and somehow fall so short. But
Mhm.
whatever. Better than not trying at all, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it from me. Awesome E3. Yeah, thank you for doing the hangout. This was really cool. We got to do it more
Absolutely.
often.
Yeah, I agree.
And let me see. Not that we need to tack this on the end of here, but we're thinking right now that the website will probably be live on this Sunday.
Okay.
With this posted, ideally, as long as it actually recorded. If this didn't record, then it was just really fun talking to you. Gina and I are going to try to record a couple of podcasts, or a podcast about X-Men Days of Future Past and Godzilla, just kind of like thoughts and impressions, probably not even like full-on reviews. And then so it's kind of like once we have these couple of podcasts and videocasts on the website, everything will be good to go. And so if
Cool.
you do feel that urge to, you know, like start writing and stuff like that, just shoot me an email. And like I said, I'm going to try to get all of the old articles because you wrote some good stuff for the site, and I'm just going to try to, you know, recreate it from the ground up and get that in the archives and stuff like that.
Cool. That'd be great.
All right, awesome. Then you're good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much.
All right, no problem.
Good seeing you.
Yeah, from 30andnerdy.com again, I'm Matt.
I'm Scott.
Yeah, and if you made it all the way to the end of this,
Yeah, I think we're just about to hit 2 hours, which is a
Yeah.
little cumbersome for most people.
Holy crap, you are the trooper. You are. I don't even know what that means. We thank you.
Yeah, good work. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, cool. I'll talk to you later, Scott.
Take care, man.
All right, bye, everyone else. If you're there.